In this video, we're going to go through everything that it takes to build a concrete mini ramp in your backyard. I'm going to go through the pole coping and itemized costs, how much everything costs all together, see if there's anything that I regret with my mini ramp, and at the end of the video, I'm going to go through a Q&A. The first thing we'll go over is the dimensions of the ramp. This is something that I went back and forth on so many different times, but eventually what really made the deciding factor on the height, the width, everything like that was actually because I got a scrap ramp, meaning my friend was getting rid of his wood ramp. Instead of building on the forms from scratch, I took his wood ramp, which then sort of narrowed down my options in a way. And it was an OC ramps is the ramp that I originally got to actually build out this concrete form. OC ramps did give me a discount code, so I'll leave that down in the description. If you're interested in getting a wood ramp from OC ramps, you get a discount. I think I get a little commission too, so it's a win-win situation. The concrete part of this did make some variations, so we did cut the ramp up and actually moved it around quite a bit. We got a little bit wider. We pushed the flat bottom out even a little bit further because it's concrete. It's naturally going to be a little bit faster than wood, so we did make some modifications to the original wood form. Now the height of the ramp altogether is about 3.5 feet tall with a 4.5 foot extension. Now there is a little bit of room on the flat bottom here as well, like there's a couple inches that it's off the ground, but I am considering that into these measurements. Originally I think it was 4 foot, that's what we had, but we did chop it down a little bit. We lost a little bit of weight. We also gained some weight with the pole coping. That's sort of, there's some wiggle room in there, but that's basically what it is with the extension back here, sitting another extra foot of that. So yeah, 4.5 feet. And the width of it is something that, of course, like people have mentioned a few times, it looks too skinny. I would love for it to be even wider and bigger, but we actually had to extend our backyard out already to get this much more side yard space. So this isn't in my backyard, it's actually the side yard area of my house. So when it comes to the width, meaning from that side over here to this side, is 13 feet. It would be nice if it's like 15, 16 feet, but yeah, we obviously have the pavers, we have other landscape things that I want to do in the future in the backyard, so that's what kind of fit in here without taking the entire backyard, 13 feet wide, and I think that's really nice. Like any narrower would start to get really skinny where it would probably affect your skating, but I think at this point, it doesn't affect my skating too much. Like I'm never worried about running off the ramp. Sometimes there's tricks where I'm like riding off the edge. It would be nice to have the extra flat bottom, but it doesn't stop me from doing those tricks. Now, something we went back and forth a few different times is actually the flat bottom length, meaning how much flat bottom you have before the transition actually starts. And we went with 12 feet. It was originally actually a little bit tighter, like I was saying before, so we did make it a little bit longer. And I think when I look at it, like when I first originally saw the form, I was like, oh, whoa, that is not enough flat bottom, or that is too much flat bottom. Actually, that's what I thought. I thought there was too much flat bottom. I thought it'd be too slow, but now when you grind it and you get to the other side, you get there quick. So the point that I'm getting at is like, it's really fast. If you want to slow down, you could slow down and not pump as much, but it's enough to where like you have time to think and you have time to react, and it has good flows. I think it's really nice for this height. Obviously it depends on how high your ramp is. You might need more flat bottom. How low your ramp is, if it's lower, you might need less flat bottom. It's also subjective, like what you want to do. So there's some give and take there, some room, you know, some wiggle room. When you're doing concrete, it's not as precise as it is with wood. Now the transition radius on here, which is like one of the most important things when you're building a ramp, and what I mean by transition radius is like the curvature that you're having, like the transition going up. As you can see, my transition is pretty mellow. I wanted something that was like really fun and friendly for everyone to skate. We'll get more into like why I did a mini ramp versus a bowl and all that in a second, but 7 feet transition, that's basically what it means. Is it's 7 foot. At 7 foot it would become vert. So like if this transition kept going up, we'd have to get to 7 feet tall before there's vert. And like I said, it's only like 3.5 feet tall, so it's nice and mellow. Although I do have the pole coping on there, which like, you know, gives you a little bit of bonk. We'll get more into like the pole coping, different stuff like that, but that's basically the dimensions. That's all the dimensions. If you have any other questions, like specific dimensions I didn't bring up, let me know down below. The deck, that is the one thing I didn't mention. The deck is about 2.5 feet wide, meaning there's not that much room on the deck, and I did that intentionally. I didn't want a really big deck where a lot of people could hang out and sort of like linger up there. I wanted it to be almost like where if you're on the deck, like you're skating or you're not skating. I sometimes don't even stand up on the deck. If I have 3 or 4 friends over here, I'll just stand below, and then sometimes I'll just jump onto the ramp. I'm not a big fan of like people standing and hanging out on the deck. I think they just get in the way. And also, obviously my ramp is on the side yard. I don't want people like hanging above the fence, like all the neighbors watching, and just having tons of people hanging out. I think like it just wouldn't look really good. So yeah, that was one of the reasons that we did a smaller deck. Also less concrete, less wood, less labor essentially, and I only have so much space in my backyard, so I had to consider that. Those are all the dimensions. So as you can see, the OC ramp sign is actually like still stuck in here. You need to like chisel this out. I won't spend too much time on the timeline. I did make a video previously that goes through like the full behind the scene process of building this concrete mini ramp. The first step was creating space where it didn't already exist. Step 2 was removing previous landscaping and leveling the yard. Step 3 was tearing down the OC ramp and moving forms to my backyard. Step 4 was building the additional forms around the original mini ramp with about 3 to 4 inches of thickness for the concrete. And step 5 was then we added the rebar and gravel for the flat bottom. Step 6 was concrete trucks and pour day. 7 was adding pool coping, paint, and lacquer. The 8th step was removing all the wood forms, which did take me quite a long time. It was a pretty brutal process. And step 9 was adding gravel under the ramp for storage. And where I'm at currently in the timeline is actually making storage under the ramp. So I've added gravel, got everything under the ramp, looking pretty good for the most part. Now what I need to do is actually find some storage containers where I can store certain things on one side, and then the other side I'm gonna have all my outdoor landscaping areas. So that was one thing we did differently with this wood form. Essentially, is we started like digging out the inside, get this empty space underneath the ramp. But it is so good for creating storage back here in the yard. I don't have to have like big tins anywhere. The tins can just go under the ramp. When it comes to the pool coping, that was a big deciding factor like early on. Actually, one of the first videos I ever made for this YouTube channel was like, should I make a wood ramp or a concrete ramp? I decided concrete very quickly, and then I decided I really wanted pool coping. There's a couple different reasons why I wanted pool coping, but I will say this stuff is called Penrose pool coping. So if you're interested in getting pool coping for your mini ramp or your bowl or your backyard DIY or any kind of DIY, actually, quick little backstory. The original company had a worker who worked for them, and then that worker ended up buying the company. And now they're called Precision Coping. They're out in Lancaster, California. Highly suggest it. I think it's the best pool coping in general. Now, while there's actually quite a few reasons I opted for pool coping, the first reason actually is because of noise. I just thought it was like a much more considerate thing for the neighbors, for other people around. It's metal on concrete versus metal on metal, which I think always just sounds a lot better too. So there's that factor. It's just basically like an audio factor of not being super loud where all the neighbors are hearing this constant dinging and wondering like why there's metal grinding on metal in the backyard. I also love how you lock in and slide on pool coping. I do think the negative side of this is I will have to do much more maintenance than if it was metal coping. Lastly, it is an aesthetic thing. Having a pool coping on concrete just makes sense, where metal coping on wood makes a lot of sense as well. That's like one of the things you got to think about in these situations, like how I'm going to do it. I think metal coping on concrete also would have been kind of weird because it would be shaking. So that works for wood. I think metal coping is really good for wood. When it comes to concrete, pool coping is just much better. I think like in the long run, obviously I'm going to have to fix some of these joints and things like that, but overall it just sounds so good. And also the other thing is like I said before, locking into your trick. I'm learning so much more tricks on this kind of coping where, yeah, it's not as forgiving. I will say it's not as forgiving. Like you can't lock up a lot more on pool coping versus metal coping, but it's just about like figuring out how to use that to your advantage. I had a lot of questions asking about neighbors, and I'll just say before we moved into this house, the ramp was something we wanted. So I've always been friendly with the neighbors, asking if they need help, etc. Now, secondly, I actually did get a permit exemption. I mentioned this in the last video and like went through the whole process of how I did this. Essentially just a way for us to make sure that nothing can happen and nobody can jeopardize our fun and hard work and time and money that we put in this ramp and in our house in general. So it's a 2-for-1 type of thing. It's you got to build relationships really nice to your neighbors and try to like ask what you can do and just build relationships. Don't come like a bat out of hell. And then 2 is do your due diligence at making sure you get a permit, exemption, or whatever it might be. Even the city was actually really weirded out when I went down there. I was like, hey, I want a permit for a skate ramp. They're like, whoa, this is the first time, literally said that, this is the first time anybody's come down here and actually did this through this process. And I've heard so many horror stories of people like putting in all this work and having to tear down the ramps and stuff like that. So yeah, a couple of you have noticed how there is no joint seams, and that was a very intentional thing. And that was something I went back and forth on for so long, actually for months before we even started this project, was like looking at skate parks everywhere I go. And the one thing that I hated is that like a lot of skate parks or even like backyard bowls or ramps, they have the seam at the bottom of the transition. What I mean by a seam is like basically you cut the concrete with a diamond blade so that it allows there to be some movement in your concrete so that it doesn't naturally crack and kind of crumble. That's the intention of having these like cut seams. But the thing about that is like the skateboard falls right into the seams, like the nut or even your trucks or anything really just bashes those seams and then they expand, and then you're constantly just having to like fix these seams, and it becomes a whole rat chase, and you're never able to get the seam back to like a nice clean level because your boards are always falling on it. So I actually opted to have no seams cut in, which is a dangerous thing. Some people might say, hey, that's like asking for disaster, but I basically allowed it to naturally crack. There's this hairline crack right here that's just started probably only like a month ago, oddly. Like after 2 months it's been set, finally started to crack. Now it's going across the whole mini ramp, and it's not too bad. It's right in the middle, so that naturally happened. Now there's one natural other hairline crack that's going up the transition ever so slightly. Like, it's tiny, but the point is that I just let it happen naturally. The earth is always shaking. Things are going to move. I knew it was going to crack. Sometimes it might not crack, you don't know, but I just did it naturally versus cutting it intentionally, because mainly I wanted it to be like an aesthetic thing too. I wanted this ramp to look nice and clean. I didn't want to have to constantly maintain joints and like be patching them up. So yeah, just let this crack naturally. You can't even see it, I don't think, on footage unless like I'm really zooming in and like showing you it. So yeah, and it's not going to even like affect you. Like rolling over this is not going to affect you at all. Where sometimes that like straight line where they cut it with the diamond blade, like, I don't know, it's something about it that like it's too big of a crack. So these hairline cracks are nice, like natural way to just let it happen. That's what I would highly suggest, is just letting it crack naturally, get these little hairlines, and then, you know, within time I can patch them up if I need to, put some crack sealant in there, but I just don't think it's going to be as damaging as if I intentionally did seam. Really no right answer. No matter what, it's going to crack. There could be even more cracks even when you do the joints. I've seen people like actually do the intentional seams, but then it naturally cracks as well. So it's like, if it's naturally going to crack and you're going to do the cut seams, it's like you're getting two different things. So yeah, I just opted to let it crack naturally, and that's what happened. It happened right in the middle. It's like the most ideal situation. The question that I get asked most commonly is, how much did that cost you? And I'll just say right away, I got a quote originally from a skater-owned concrete company that like builds backyard stuff like this is what they specialize in, for $10,000. It was insane. I paid almost nearly half that. I'll go into the itemized cost right now because I actually wrote everything down. Now there were some other costs in here, I will say that. So the labor cost, the first labor cost was $800, and then it was $318 for form supplies, meaning just like extra lumber and stuff like that on top of the ramp that I already picked up for free, which was a big way to cut down a lot of the costs. Is $376 for the pole coating. It was $1,834 for the concrete truck, which was the biggest cost, along with the concrete pump, another $500, $2,100 for the labor and other rebar costs on that day, which brought me around to $6K, just under $6K, $6,000 to build this whole thing. And that's with me cutting corners. I'll just say this: get your friends, your closest friends involved, and start picking the brains on how you can save money as well. So I had my friend Kyle Gallagher helping me, Sean Ross, Joe, like all these people that have experience doing this. Kyle was like the main pourer, and he had his friends come in to help with the finish. So what I try to do is like ask him how I can cut down costs, moving gravel, doing a lot of things myself. I did get quite a lot of questions about why I did a mini ramp, really basic small mini ramp versus like a really cool bowl. There are so many bowls in Oceanside. There's a lot of local bowls to here actually in the backyard. So that is one reason. The other reason, which is the more honest, truthful reason, is that I didn't have the space for a bowl. We have a pool actually right on the other side where this camera is, with the jacuzzi and things like that. And my backyard isn't just for me, it's for my wife, it's for my family, for other people to come and enjoy. So yeah, that's basically why I didn't do bowls, because I don't have the space. If I had an acre of land, I'd be doing a whole DIY skate park. This is like the best thing I can do with this space. And the other thing I'll say, the add on to that, is I wanted something that everybody can skate, and also wanted something that didn't intimidate me. I didn't want to like be like nervous to go skate in my backyard. I wanted to be able to skate this alone, solo, without like any concern. So that was the reason why I actually didn't go with the bowl as well. So there's a lot of different facets to it, but essentially I just wanted it to be fun, be really mellow, really easy, low hanging fruit, and not be scared to go out and enjoy my backyard. I have some friends that have like backyard pools, and I just feel like they don't really want to skate them alone. They want other people to be there, and I just didn't want that feeling. I wanted to be able to just ride back here. Also, the other thing is I wanted like my nephews or anybody to come skate here, my dad, like anybody at any age, at any skate level. Let's get into some of these questions you guys asked me. The Instagram handle is yeah, heard it. They said, would you do anything differently if you had to do it again? Now, the one thing I think I would have done differently is probably try to add some sort of oil or something to the forms underneath, so it would have been easier to break them down. Like break down the forms that were underneath, meaning the forms that like didn't have access to screws. Like I had to pry, cut. I wish I had like thought about that in a different way. Like I wish we would have taken it off and almost screwed everything in, or just done something differently. I'm not really sure. So that is the one thing I definitely would have done differently. Probably would have done more stuff myself in the long run, but that's also because I have the perspective that I have now. And I've often said this with like some of my friends that ask me, is like, would you pay for people to come help you like I did if I were to do it again? And the answer is no. I would do it pretty much all myself, probably, then have like maybe one or two friends come help the day that the truck came, maybe 3 friends. But the point is, like, I wouldn't have known what to do had I not already gone through that experience. So now that's my perspective, but it wasn't my perspective before. So I don't regret having all the labor costs and having to pay for labor to do it right. I don't regret that at all. Honestly, it's exactly what I wanted. And it sounds kind of maybe egotistical, but like there's just not much I would change at all. Maybe how I painted the pool coping, I would have done it a little bit differently. The one thing I did is like I painted this white and then I painted it again right in the same day. I think I did like 3 layers in the same day, and that really like made the coping super sticky. So then it was a little bit of a brutal process to get the coping grinding. I had to lacquer it, still didn't grind. It was just like really thick coping or really thick paint. So I was like chipping the paint off and it was sticking to the truck. So then I had to wax it, I had to lacquer it, wax it. It took a while. It took probably like a good month. Now the coping grinds so good. Probably better than metal coping at this point. Next question comes from Alexis Oleski. Said, why not a mini bowl? I kind of got into that, so I won't answer that. There's another question that he asked is, why all turf and no plants? So yeah, as you can see, they have a lot of turf in the backyard. Actually, I'll swing my camera around over there. See, over there, garden. That's our veggie garden. So yeah, I have a little veggie garden going. We're gonna get more plants over here. It's a process. I think a lot of times when people see these videos, they think like maybe I'm doing it all within like a week or something like that. Like we've almost been here for a year, a little over a year now at this house, and yeah, it just takes time. So eventually I do want to do a bench on the other side. I want to do more pots, more plants. We got the veggie garden going. Like I want to do so much more in the backyard, but you also have to like piecemeal things. So what I mean by that is like you have to buy something, make more money, buy something. Like that's pretty much how I do it. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a little bit of a piecemeal situation. So I will eventually have more plants and not just turf, but the turf is pretty expensive cost. GOP Skateboard says, got plans and instructions. No instructions, but hopefully this video helps you and the last video helped you to sort of show it. I'm not one of those people that wants to like follow a very linear plan, like step 1, step 2, step 3. I don't like doing that, so I'm also not the type of person that's gonna like create that sort of process. I'm sure there's plans out there. If you're really interested in like the specs and things like that, hopefully this video helps. And also I would check out the OC Ramps website and just like look at their mini ramp. That's what I would do honestly if I was redoing it. Go to OC Ramps website. I'm sure they have the specs of their mini ramp, and then just start from there. At Blunt to Fakey said, was it a pain in the ass to get it grinding well? Yeah, it's a great question. It was such a pain in the ass. It was a combination of lacquer, wax, grinding it a lot. Like I was just coming back here and just doing front side grinds every day, even though it was really hard, just trying to like basically get that coping going. So it was a little bit of a brutal process. And then at Shawnee Boy 1990 said, would you ever in the future make the ramp wider? That would be awesome. I think that if I was going to make it wider, probably have to push out that fence again, even further out to the sidewalk. And then I would probably just bowl it around on the other half. I don't know if I'd make it wider, but I would just bowl it all around at this same height and then keeping the extension as an extension all the way around. That would be the dream case scenario eventually if we have enough money to move the ramp out and add more concrete. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Appreciate you. Join the channel members if you want live Q&A sessions that I'm going to be doing on this ramp. I'm trying to do them every Friday. Injured right now, so I'm taking a little bit of a break, but yeah, if you want more insights, go back and forth with me. Join channel members. Hit that like button underneath this video. I love you. Mash.